We know very little about girls on the move, their stories and their need for protection. 2020 is the year when their stories get to be heard. In every girl there is a Pippi, and just like Pippi, every girl deserves the chance to take control of her own story.
Hi, and warm welcome to this seminar that Save the Children, together with Astrid Lindgren Company, is arranging to have the global report launch of Girls on the Move. I also would like to say welcome to all the ones that are joining us online. 75 years ago, an unaccompanied girl named Pippi Longstocking arrived alone in a new town, searching for a safe place to call home, which she did. And in that home, she did many things that had inspired many of us and many girls all around the world. Today, more girls than ever are forced to leave their homes in search for a safe place where they can call home. They're fleeing from violence and abuse, and unfortunately, during unsafe migration routes, they're faced many times with even more violence and exploitation. There are also girls that, like Pippi, are very resilient and very strong. These girls are the Pippis of today. Save the Children has partnered with Astrid Lindgren Company to help expand the work that they already have been doing to support and create sustainable change for girls on the move. Today, the stories of many girls on the move will be given voice, and you will hear the results from the reports will be presented. We also will have a dialogue together with politicians and experts to discuss the finding in the report, but also to discuss why change isn't happening. My name is Soledad Pinheiro Misa, and it's a great honor to facilitate this event today. Pippi Longstocking has always been a big role model for me. In many ways, she always helped me find the strength when facing facts in a brutal world. But she also always reminds me to reconnect with my own and our own common humanity. She has said that if you're very strong, then you also have to be very kind. And that reminds me often that we are one humankind. And I hope that I will facilitate this seminar today in a way that is both humane and kind in Pippi's spirit. Most of all, we will give space for the voices of girls on the move. And now we will share one of the stories that will be presented to you by screen.
When I came, I was young, so I just followed my mom's footsteps. It wasn't easy because we had problems with documents. So my brother and I had to stay behind and because we got arrested in Zimbabwe. So apparently my mom was told that we will have to stay there until our documents get fixed. It's not easy, but then it's like a responsibility now because I'm a girl, I have that motherhood, and I'll have to take care of my brothers. Well, the good thing about coming here, I would say, it's made me grow, and it's made me know how life works. Because if I was back home, I'll still be under mom's family, and I'll still have wait for them, and I won't have the courage to speak for me and defend my brothers. So it's built me in a way. And it's also good because I've always wanted to speak English and French, because I felt like those are international languages. If I have to work in the media, I should know. I know I'll be a journalist because that's what I want to work in the media, and also have a restaurant one day. You need courage, you have to be strong and believe in yourself. That's it.
Now, dear friends, it's a great honor for me to leave the floor to our very strong and kind leader, Helena Tibell, who is the Secretary General of Save the Children in Sweden. A big warm applause. Thank you.
I want to warmly welcome all of you to the launch of our series of Girls on the Move and the research. To all of you here in the room, this fantastic venue here at Fotografiska, but also all of you who are joining us online. A warm welcome. And as Soledad said, my name is Helena Tibell, and I am the CEO of Save the Children Sweden. And I'm really glad to be able to be here today to be part of this launch, because this topic is really close to my heart, and it is also really close to the heart of Save the Children. It has been a really strange year, I think, for all of us. We have all had to adapt to new circumstances, and in this respect, we are extra relieved that the research we did was conducted last year, because it would have been very complicated to get these results during the pandemic. And under present conditions, these would have been almost impossible to conduct. But at the same time, we know that migrants and refugees around the world are amongst the ones hardest hit by the pandemic, which makes the research that we now have and its findings even more important. And we are actually not releasing just one report today, we are releasing 4 reports, as well as a global summary. And less than a week ago, Save the Children's international movement also released a girlhood report for 2020 that specifically has looked at how girls are affected by COVID-19. And unfortunately, it shows that a lot of the progress that has been put in place for many years is actually now at stake for millions of girls around the world. And for girls on the move, the situation is even tougher. It's tougher than ever because closed borders make it more difficult to move from one country to the next. This means that girls are left with 2 choices. Either stay where they are, which often is in a situation of imminent danger, of violence, and of hunger, or leave, but on routes that are even more dangerous now than ever before. So why are we focusing specifically on girls on the move? Well, girls on the move, they tend to fall between the cracks in research, in policy, in programmatic approaches. And even if there is an increase in literature which deals with gender and migration, or children and migration, few studies focus on the intersection of gender, age, and migration, and more specifically on girls on the move. And during the research, we also found that programs are not always tailored to the specific needs that girls have. Because during the work with the report, we met girls, for example, involved in child labor, and they were doing this in domestic homes, as domestic workers in private homes. And they were not reached by the programmatic teams, which were focusing on child labor on the streets, which mostly is child labor where boys are. Save the Children Sweden, we are a membership movement. And it is through our broad base of volunteers and of engagement and of support that makes up who we are. And in that support, we also have very important partners who enable our work. And without partners, we would not have the resources to improve the lives of children everywhere. And that's why I am so specifically happy that Astrid Lindgren Company wanted to work together with us to celebrate Pippi's 75th birthday in a very meaningful way. And through this cooperation, we started our common campaign, which is called Pippi of Today. And Pippi, she has so much in common with the girls that we meet. She came to Sweden all by herself in the aftermath of World War II to live in a small town in the house of Villekulla. And she had traveled the seas, and most of all, she was strong, she was brave, she was kind. And girls on the move, they are strong. To venture out into the unknown in the hope of survival and a better future, one has to be brave, because it is certainly not without grave risks. And these characteristics are also so well captured by the photographer Elin Zäta. Elin, she is here tonight. And in this fantastic photograph that you can see on the wall here, never underestimate girl power. And the artwork is also part of our important campaign. And if you might want this print, which I'm assuming you do, of course, since it's so beautiful, you can actually be part of an auction and bid on this print on Tradera. And at the same time, of course, you will support our work on Girls on the Move. So to close, I would like to thank Astrid Lindgren Company and all the other partners involved for their commitment to Girls on the Move particularly, but also to us as an organization. And Pippi of Today is a great example of what happens when we work together to achieve common goals. It gets creative, it gets fruitful, and it is really good. And the research on the Girls on the Move comes with clear recommendations for how we can improve and expand our programs for Girls on the Move, and the money that we raise through the Pippi of campaign today will help us achieve those goals. So with these words, I would like to leave the floor to my colleague Niyika Machendedse from Save the Children South Africa, who will give you the background to our initiative on Girls on the Move. So thank you, and once again, big welcome to all of you.
In May 2018, Save the Children South Africa conducted an exchange visit between Save the Children Sweden and Save the Children Italy. And during our deliberations and discussion with colleagues in Save the Children Sweden, a discussion started around the question of where are the girls in terms of the children on the move in the region. And this came out of the realization in our practice that we were identifying quite a lot of boys, particularly in our outreach program that we had launched, being an exchange program between the outreach work being done in Save Italy. And we noticed that there were quite a lot of boys we were identifying in this outreach work, and less girls. And we started wondering whether this meant there were more boys migrating or there were more boys visible. So the question came out during that discussion in Sweden with colleagues, and we took it further from there, and Save Sweden made a commitment to actually support a study to find out more reasons and facts around girls on the move. And the discussion around the gender segregation of children that we save in migration became quite topical in that discussion. And I'm quite glad to realize that that conversation that started then has resulted in a global study which has been carried in 3 continents, if I'm correct. And the results that we have seen from these different spheres that has been done is really quite impressive and informative in terms of programming. It's really strengthening our position as a movement, as Save the Children, and partners that may use this study to actually have evidence-based programming, which is gender sensitive in terms of our response to children on the move, and coming up with a response that will really cater and protect the girls who are in migration. And particularly for South Africa being a predominantly a destination country, this is going to be very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now it's my honor to leave the floor to Sara Granath, who's a special advisor on Girls on the Move on Save the Children in Sweden, who has the task to share the findings and the results of the reports with us, which is not an easy task, but she will try to do it, and she will do it brilliantly. So a warm welcome to Sara.
Thank you. And we will see, I will try to stay within my time and not repeat what has already been said. If Nika was actually here, I would thank him for the good introduction. But as he was saying, this is a work that has been going on for quite a while now. The talk started in 2018, and then it's been ongoing with actually studies in 3 continents, as he mentioned. What we found, as Helena also mentioned, is that a lot of the studies that do take place, they when it comes to migration, they lack a gender lens, but they also, when they do have a gender lens, can lack the child perspective. So we also found that there was a lack also in literature, and not only in the programming, that we met less girls than boys. So the primary purpose of the research series to start with was to generate evidence that we could use and improve our programming. But we have also developed recommendations when it comes to advocacy and also further research, because there are a lot of gaps in all those areas. And I should also say that we have also produced a podcast. We have Save the Children documentary that you can find where pods are, and there's a new episode out there now. And that one used to be in Swedish, but now there are also episodes in English. Now I have to remember this part also. Here we are. The Girls on the Move initiative is a global series of action research that put girls themselves at the center. Because girls are the ones best placed to tell us about their experiences. And it is a summary of the summary, one could say. Because there are 4 studies made, and then we have made a global summary where we sort of have taken some of the findings from all those 4 studies. So there is a really rich sort of data of stories from girls and experiences if you look at each one of the reports from the different contexts. They have been conducted across 4 different regions and within existing Save the Children programs. It has also engaged Save the Children teams to immediately strengthen the ongoing programs with the findings they have found while doing the research. And the places where we have done the studies is in Southern Africa, in Latin America, and the Balkans. The approach when it comes to methodology has been slightly different in the different regions, but the one that has been in common is that there has been a participatory approach when it comes to the girls, interviewing them, and also when it comes to interacting with the teams to have this approach where you can learn while they are doing the research, and also the review of existing literature. Altogether, we have spoken to 104 girls, and we have also spoken to caregivers, parents, a broad variety of key stakeholders, and of course Save the Children staff in the different contexts. I would say both in the findings, and you will later see also in the recommendations, what happens is, as we have also mentioned before, the girls, they fall between the cracks. The girls, as migrants, female and children, tend to fall between the cracks because, but therefore, to account for their realities, multiple perspectives need to guide researchers, practitioners, and policymakers. And not surprisingly, girls on the move are different from each other. They bring a diverse set of needs, capabilities, and support networks. Policy and programs may not reach or effectively support girls if they don't account for this diversity. One of the interesting findings from the series relate to girls' care work. Girls across regions are involved in different kinds of care work. As Helena mentioned at the beginning, for example, there's the domestic household work, but there's also girls who are mothers or care for siblings or elderly family members. And this impacts both the risks these girls face and often prevents their access to services and activities. Another finding was that it was not always easy to find unaccompanied girls, due to that one of the strategies for protection was to adopt sort of pretend families and travel with them, and therefore they would not be documented as unaccompanied when arriving to different countries. Narratives on girls' migration often focus on the detrimental aspects without acknowledging a far more complex reality for girls, and that is that movement generates opportunities as well as risks. The portrayal of the girl as victim may hide the agency the girls bring to travel, as well as advantages they gain from leaving their home communities, where they may experience violence and harmful gender norms. On the other hand, the victor's mentality, while it does highlight the girl's agency, it can let duty bearers off the hook when it comes to ensuring girls' rights to safety, well-being, education, and health. This is important because it brings a nuance to the way we understand the experiences of girls on the move, and also has implications for the way in which we can best support them, how we to prevent risk, but also how we strengthen their own capacity. Violence, organized crime, and gender norms are some of the things that limit girls' options for personal advancement and self-protection. But even so, we still see evidence of girls' efforts to protect themselves before, during, and after migration. To start with, migration in itself is a strategy for advancement and protection. It can be a response to immediate threats of gender-based violence in their households or communities, but it can also be a strategy to get access to education or challenge gender norms. Secondly, girls employ a broad range of strategies to protect themselves and cope with challenges throughout their journey. Some of those strategies can include, for example, getting help from truck drivers and taxi drivers for transportation. It can also include pretending to be boys, take birth control pills to avoid pregnancy in case they get raped, but it can also be to find a male partner prior to or during travel, or travel in caravans or together with peers or other migrants. Some of these strategies can produce mixed results. They can either protect them, but they can also be a risk in themselves, where, for example, drivers of transport and partners can turn out to be violent and abusive. Girls across regions also created peer-to-peer networks and/or solidarity networks between girls and women. In the Balkan region, we saw that the girls expressed that their mothers and sisters were their primary supporter. And in South Africa, girls got help from older women who had come before them and who helped and guided the girls once they arrived. One thing that did come up as a common trend were the experiences of violence, including gender-based violence, which was part of all aspects of girls' lives, from origin communities through transit to destination countries. Border crossings were particularly dangerous, as both border guards and police could be persons who were violent towards the girls and their families. Many girls had also experienced or witnessed sexual exploitation and abuse, and for instance, having to trade sex for basic resources such as food and transport. One of the interesting finds that sort of surprised us a bit was the fact that a lot of the girls interviewed in Southern Africa stated that the drivers of trucks and taxis were actually persons that helped them, that would provide them with transport and food and help them cross borders by helping them to hide inside their trucks. This has been seen previously more as a risk to the girls, but for a lot of the girls, these were actually some of the things that they said made them safer during their journey. When it comes to recommendations, we have divided them into sort of general recommendations, programming, advocacy, and research. And I will concentrate on some of the general recommendations. Let me see there, sorry, I got lost there. The primary recommendation is to listen and learn from girls. They are the ones best equipped, to know how we can help them and how we can design the programming in a way that actually makes them safer. For interventions targeting children on the move, to address their needs and to protect them, a thorough intersectional gender analysis needs to guide programmatic and advocacy efforts. We have to recognize and account for the diversity of girls on the move. And this is very important when we design both programs, but also for authorities, for example. We have to also consider gender-based violence prevention and response as a core aspect of programming and policy that targets children. And something that also came up as a strong find was that a lot of the girls were victims of xenophobia and racism, and that this was something that affected their everyday lives. There. When it comes to programming, one of the things that we found was that we need to prepare and equip girls on the move. In the long term, that means to investigate the drivers of migration in countries of origin, including gender and age-specific drivers. And we need to invest in creating and promoting safe, regular, and legal pathways to destination. But in the short term, also awareness raising, correct information and peer learning sessions can also reach girls with information and harm reduction strategies. One of the recommendations that came out strongly from the girls when it comes to recommendations for programming was this role of caregivers. So to integrate caregiving to their children, so to speak, in programming would be a very good way to reach girls. And that can be both siblings, but also their own children, since a lot of the girls do become pregnant or have children during their migration. I will finish here. But one of the main things when it comes to advocacy is to challenge state policies aimed at further restricting migration and making legal entry into country harder as they increase the risks that girls face while on the move. So that is something that we see very clearly, that the more difficult it is to enter a country, the more risk it is for a girl to try and migrate. I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you. You're staying with me on stage, I hope.
Yeah, I am.
Yes.
But
You needed to get out of the spotlight. Just
yes.
1 minute. Okay. We will now welcome 2 more guests to have a dialogue together with Sara. And before I actually invite them, I would like to invite you, because we're going to get 2 experts here on stage. But I would like to give you the opportunity just to talk to your neighbor, the one that is close to you now that we're in Corona times, and just like share some reflections. And what do you think, if you have time, just to share, what do you think are the main reasons we today are failing to protect the rights of girls on the move? So welcome, just to say hi to and reflect a little bit with you. Där. Lead by example. Okay. Dear friends, I hope this is just like the start of a dialogue that will continue. And especially we will continue it here on stage. I would love to welcome our 2 new panelists that we have with us. We have Alice Kuhnke. Oh, there she is. I was like, where is she? Now she's back. That is with us by link. Can we hear you, Alice? Just say something. Yeah, you hear us, but we don't hear you. Maybe unmute yourself.
But now you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
I'm here.
Very good. Alice, as you know, is an EU parliamentarian for Miljöpartiet. She's also a member of the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs and the Women's Rights and Gender Equality Committees in the Parliament. It's also an honor to have Petra Tötterman Andorff with us today. You're the Secretary General of Kvinna, but you're also the board president of Concord, who gathers 76 civil society organizations in Sweden. Well, welcome to both of you. Have you been following the seminar, Alice? Have you?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't been able to listen to everything, but I have read the reports, so I'm well prepared for the discussion.
That I know, so that's good to know. We will come back to you with a question, but I think I will ask the first question to you, Petra. Maybe if we can change places so I can see Alice, you and me.
You and me?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or maybe, so I don't give my back. She doesn't see my back, but I don't see her. Now I see the whole panel. Okay, thank you. Okay, back. Petra, you also read the reports and now heard the summary.
Yes.
And also listened to the podcast that we highly recommend everyone to listen to. And I know it's not easy, but are there any specific findings in the reports that impacted you specifically And then also, can you share with us how they relate in the work that Kvinna till Kvinna does and the challenges also that you are facing?
Yes, I can. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Save the Children for bringing this extremely important issue to the table, to the agenda again, because it's necessary and it's something that's not that common. I think I would like to start with your question to see how this relates to the work that the Kvinna till Kvinna Foundation is doing. So just really brief, we work in 20 conflict-affected countries in 4 regions. The ones that are in common with the study you've done is Western Balkans and a few countries in the African continents. And we, as many other organizations, Save the Children included, we support partners in these conflict-affected and humanitarian contexts. And very many of our partners, women rights organizations, work specifically on these issues, supporting girls on the move. And we also have a program in Sweden doing this work. And I think that there were several things in your report that stood out. And that's really worth noticing. And the first one I would say is the extreme violence that these girls face. They face it in the countries where they live, their homes. They face it in their homes. They face it in their societies. They face it when they're on the move. But also, I thought was quite evident, and also from quite a few of the quotes that you have in there, in the countries that they actually arrive to. And the second thing that I would like to lift that I thought really stood out, and I think it's extremely relevant now in these times of COVID, when we see that the increase of poverty all over the world, it's women's and these young girls' lack of economic empowerment, lack of their economic rights. They don't have them, and it makes them extremely vulnerable throughout this entire process. And I also thought that there are too few actors that seem to see it as their role to inform these girls about their rights and about, well, their right to both economic rights, but also the right to their bodies. So, and then the last thing, and you push this, I think, really hard, and it's important. These girls are extremely vulnerable, but they are also actors of change in their own lives, for their families, for the communities that they arrive to. And I think this is something that we see every day, and I'm sure Save the Children does it as well. And COVID, once again, pointed to that. You know, this happened, and women all over the world stepped up. They faced this crisis, and they were the first responders in very many instances. So I think that there are many points in the reports that are really relevant to the work that Kvinna till Kvinna does. And like you said, for those of you who haven't listened to the past, I mean, the reports are great, but if you have plug them in, it's 30 minutes, go for a walk, and bring a tissue, because you're going to need it, because it's heartbreaking when you hear these girls' voices and really talk about their experience that they have, but it's also extremely empowering to hear about taking these brave steps.
Yeah, but as you say, it's both it moves you, but it also, in my case at least, it caused a lot of frustration, because this is nothing that is new. It's in quite the opposite is something that is increasing this situation. And with that, like a follow-up question to you, Alice, that had also read the reports, what were your impacts, but also were there new findings in the reports? And also I'd like to ask you if you can share what are your opinions on why are we failing these girls, and why, from a policy perspective, what are the reasons we have been failing these girls for so long? Unmute yourself. Unmute. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I was so into the conversation that I forgot to unmute myself. I'm sorry. But first of all, I would like to thank Save the Children as one of the most important stakeholders that we have not only in Sweden and in the EU, but in the world. I mean, it's so important that NGOs and civil societies and volunteers who really sees and knows what's happening, that they have the chance and the possibility to report back to us. And I would say the main reason why we are failing is, and this is sad to say, but I think it's important to speak out loud, it's because we are lacking in the will. We are not lacking in the knowledge or in facts, but we are lacking in the will to really make a change. Because we all know, even though we have new figures and new way to measure the suffering, we all know that this is going on, and still we don't do what is needed to be done. And I think I think that our politicians that form new migration policies, that know how to save lives, and especially how to save those who are the most vulnerable, which are the girls and the women. I mean, we could do so much more if we had the will to do it.
And to follow up, I guess, like people would ask, it's like why and or how can we increase the will? And what are you doing in the parliament to try to increase the will? And do you think that this kind of reports help in that process?
I know that these kinds of reports helps. What we are trying to do is to use the platform that we as parliamentarians have. We are 705 parliamentarians from all different party groups. And of course, there are some party groups within the parliament that really don't, and their politics are very clear. They don't want to help. They feel that people should be left alone. And that's why it's so important that we, who really want to do more, invite and listen to the experts. And Save the Children is one of the big expert organizations that we have. So what we do is that we invite them, we take the reports, we put them as background material when we form policies that we try to get a majority in the parliament to vote yes to. And we use the knowledge that the expert organizations, the stakeholder organizations have, and we invite them to our different local organizations, but we also try, when it's not COVID-19 pandemic, to go to them to see what's really happening on the field. But I think this knowledge is so important because we as politicians, we are always colored by the way, I am a Green politician, so of course there are a lot of people, voters that can say, but that is only the Greens. But this is not me saying this. This is facts from Save the Children, and they show the figures that Save the Children and other organizations have brought forward. Then, it's more truthworthy than when it comes only from me.
Okay. Thank you, Alice. We'll come back to concrete things that politicians can do, and to continue the dialogue. I'd like to emphasize that this is a dialogue, so you can build up on each other and listen to each other and not only answer the questions. So also comment each other's comment each other's comments. But Sara, I would like to, when you presented and you said that while you were doing the report, Save the Children was also trying to adjust the way that you were working. And we need a lot of concrete examples, and an organization like the Save the Children that leads by example and makes sure that the girls on the move don't fall between the cracks as they do today. It's a complex issue, but would you say are the concrete things that you're doing that could also inspire others and also politicians?
Well, I think the first thing is that we already have a lot when it comes to the advocacy part and the policymakers. We have a lot of the things in place already that are needed for this change. We have all the conventions on women's rights, on children's rights, on refugee rights, and we have agreed to this. So I think it's important to just emphasize that we need to also follow what we have agreed to and not just have it be a piece of paper. So I think that is sort of the first step when it comes to advocacy. And then when it comes to programming, I think it's the reports hopefully will inspire others to really look at seeing what we try to emphasize in the report, the differences between different groups of girls, because we could see that groups in Southern Africa don't have exactly the same challenges as the groups as the girls in the Balkans, for example. they do have things in common, but they also have things that differ. So it's important that we don't have a one-size-fits-all or think that the programming that we do in one place will fit perfectly in another place. And apart from that, I think the whole of giving the correct information and strengthening girls in all contexts is something that we can encourage ourselves to be better at, but also encourage other NGOs and other stakeholders to do.
And to bridge to you, Petra, and the Petra. I can say it in Swedish.
You can say whichever way you like.
The work that you're doing in civil society and within Kvinna till Kvinna. What it's needed to actually to increase the results, and how are you have also read the recommendations in the reports. How are these recommendations aligned with the work that you're already doing, and are they compatible with the resources and the possibilities the civil society have today?
No. To your last question. No, it's not. No, I think, it's not just like Kvinna till Kvinna. There are a lot of Swedish organizations that don't do the direct programming and work, but they work through partners. So looking through the recommendations that you had, I would say that they align pretty well, or very well actually, with the agendas that the women's rights organization in humanitarian context and in conflict context have. It's about the gendered aspects of programming, the gender aspects of humanitarian programs, but also looking at how migration laws and processes affect women and girls. So I would say that they're very much in line with what local and national women's rights organizations are pushing forward. And I think as you're saying, there were two things in the report that I thought was really interesting. And the first one was when you talked about, in the section that talks about the coping mechanisms. And of course, what stood out to me was, well, basically the base of how Kvinna till Kvinna started, when they said that they sought a lot of comfort in other girls that were around them and in older women, that they took responsibility for each other, and that they shared coping mechanisms and strategies on how to make this being on the move more safe. And that's exactly what we discovered in the mid-90s when we came to refugee camps in the Balkans, that there were women there already, and they had already formed these so-called safe spaces where focus was on dealing with the trauma from being exposed to sexual violence, but also sharing experiences on how to dealing with this conflict. And linking to what you said, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. We can't do the same in Southern Africa as we can in the Balkans with women coming from Afghanistan as in Colombia, which means that the local organization and the national organization, it's in that mix where you get that experience and the expertise from that context, because we know that women's rights organizations, they're always there in the refugee camps. We see it now in Lebanon after COVID, when a lot of domestic workers, a lot of young women were thrown out of their homes because of COVID, and that's when the local women's rights organizations stepped forward. So I think it's this mix of big organizations like Save the Children, and just like Alice said as well, because you have this strength behind you when you come with your expert voice, but mixing that with the local women's organization. And no, they do not get enough resources to push these agendas, to be in the front line every day. So I think that this report, in complement with all the other things that we have, that's when we possibly could push the agenda forward. And as a feminist, of course, what can we do? I would think that my go-to answer would be, well, if we all crush patriarchy together, we'd come a long way on that road, but that might be a tad bit a big of a conversation for tonight as we're getting to the end of this conversation. But for me, that's where we have the lack of political will, because there's a lot of power invested in the way that the world looks today.
Yeah. Seems like Petra is saying that we have a lack of political will, and it seems like you as a politician agree on that, Alice. And also that many of the political decisions that are being taken are not making things better for migrants or girls on the move or women's rights always overall. You also read the recommendations in the report. What are your comments, and what do you think it's needed? Also, how do you see the situation when it comes to the policies both in Sweden, in the EU, and on a global level right now?
First of all, I have to underline and agree with what Petra said right now and what Sara said earlier on. We need to, of course, do everything we can in the situation we are in, but I think it's important to spread the knowledge that right now it's not that we only have to fight to make sure that girls and women get the rights foreseen, and that we really do our uttermost to make sure that they can have the rights also when they are on the move, because we also need to defend human rights. It's so sad, but I'm in so many discussions within the parliament with the politicians from other parties, and having to defend the right to seek asylum is a case. If somebody had told me this 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, or 20 years ago when I studied at the Stockholm University, I wouldn't believe it. But right now we have to defend the right to seek asylum. And this is a fact. And I think that I meet too many people who are not aware of this. And we know that if we start to think that human rights are negotiable, then we know who will suffer the most. It will be the girls. It will be the women. So what Petra said about patriarchy is absolutely right. And it's like a living nightmare, I think. So we really do need to do so much more. And the recommendations that Save the Children put forward in this report are, of course, absolutely extremely valuable, not at least when it comes to legal pathways and to make sure that we have policies that takes extra special care of the most vulnerable groups and so on and so forth. So I will take these recommendations and add them to the work being done from the Greens in the Parliament, and really be strengthened that we have Save the Children as the expertise organization putting these recommendations on the table.
Thank you, Alice. Now, Sara, I guess you are happy to hear that from Alice, I would say, and also agree with Petra. But what would you say, what would you like to highlight to both Alice and Petra, but also to all of us here, on what Save the Children needs, what kind of support, and how all of us can get engaged in making a difference and support Save the Children's work for Girls on the Move?
Well, I think it depends on very much where you are, obviously. There are different ways of supporting. But the kind of work that some of the politicians, and definitely in the two parts of the parliament where Alice is working, there is a lot of important work being done, even though we know that it's in a lot of ways going backwards more than forwards. But I do think it's very important that we keep having those politicians there that do fight for the human rights and fight to keep these, even if we would like to move forward. I think when it comes to NGOs, it's important that we share our findings, that we share our experiences, and that we also work together in the best ways that we can, so that we can learn from each other. And I think it's a good example of when we do these things, for example, that we share the work and the research that we do with each other, because I think we can widen the sort of perspectives that we can have, because we do have our different sort of strengths. Where Save the Children, obviously, we have the strength of the child perspective. So I think that was one of the important things. And then we also have many people here today that are involved in the Pippi campaign. And I think that's also important, because it's a way for us to reach more to the public, to have companies sign up to the Pippi of Today campaign, and highlight on their platforms the importance of Girls on the Move and make them seen there that there are a lot of actors, not only sort of the usual suspects, as they say, with us thinking that this is important, but there are also a lot of other actors in society that do think that these issues are important. So I think that's also important to keep moving forward and keep spreading the word. And a little bit like the example with the truck drivers and the taxi drivers, that we also need to see that maybe there are actors that we haven't worked with before that could be good partners for us, that we could work with more. We heard from the girls that there were certain taxi companies that were safe to go with. What are they doing, which is good for the girls? Can we spread that? Can we work further with that? So I think it's good to look at different partners and reach out to all corners.
Good. Thank you, all of you. And I think that of reaching out to all corners also reminded me of one Pippi quote. She has many very brilliant quotes. And she says that, "Let me tell you, it's dangerous to keep quiet too long. Your tongue shrivels up if you don't use it." And now all of us have been listening to the stories of Girls on the Move, and I think it's all our responsibility to not keep quiet about it and also support all of us in the movement to create the change that is needed, so more, not only politicians, but politicians are voted by us, but also can create the change. And so it's not the way that it's now, like Ali said, that not too many care. And I think it's important to show that we actually not only care, but that we're willing to participate in creating a difference. With that, I would like to thank the whole panel, and I think Helena is also going to leave the word to Helena.
I have the great honor to hand over some fantastic flowers. And Alice, I am really sorry, but I don't have flowers for you. But if you would have been here, we would, of course, have given you flowers. So, Soledad, thank you so much for moderating this so fantastically nice. And we really know that you feel strongly for this issue. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you.
And thank you, Petra, also for joining us in this panel. And it's fantastic with your experience, your expertise to link this to the rights of children and women, girls and women. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Sara, of course, for your fantastic knowledge and bringing this forward within Save the Children. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you.
And Alice, flowers from my heart to you, but that you really so strongly advocate for this. It's fantastic, and we feel your passion through the video. So thank you so much. And we also have a book to each of you. This is a Pippi. Pippi is celebrating her birthday. So we thought that this would be a good book to give to you as well. And Alice, we will make sure you get this as well. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining us, everyone in the room and online.
Thank you.